Hiya, and welcome back to Far Beyond the World, the game that teaches us that the proper response to seeing a chest full of gold is holy shit. Jesus Christ. I can't think of much else to say before we get started, so let's just hop right in. Rannoch stops near one of the lounges, placing down his heavy load. That was a bit careless of you, he utters in a semi-harsh tone. I'm sorry, I was just taken back by, well, this. I point to the wooden chest and he sighs. It's fine, they didn't seem to mind. Do you think they suspect? I ask, not really sure what to make of their indifference. I don't know, but I don't think it matters now. He says in a hushed tone and looks cautiously back towards the hall. I stand awkwardly to the side, not sure what to say as he's correcting the fastening of the chest. Once he has it adjusted, he hoists the gold onto his arm and we proceed to leave. At first I thought he might have been cross with me, but he quickly smiles back, clearly happy to be on the way. I decide to wait until we leave the villa grounds entirely until I speak up again. No point running my mouth with the bunnies watching, especially Leaf. She's really dead set on sending me spiteful gazes. Truth be told, she reminds me of Trist in that sense, but unlike him, she has no actual reason to dislike me. So why is she staring me down so intently? But in all honesty, I don't care. I have bigger problems to worry about, and right now even they have to take back seat. I finally get to leave this place and explore the world, even if just for a little bit. It's exactly like what we talked about those very first few days. When we veer onto the road, I take a deep, exaggerated breath. That meeting was oddly cold and abrupt. Then again, how can I blame them when that fat bitch pops up everywhere like a jack-in-a-box? A what? He snorts in amusement. At another word he might not understand. You know, one of those mechanical toy thingies that has a puppet on a string that leaps out of a box when you open it. You really are a noble. Hiya. He continues to chuckle, causing me to shake my head. How are your shoes, my lord? They're alright. I wiggle my foot teasingly. The leather sole slips every now and then, but a gentle tap at the side of my foot pushes it back in place. I state, but his confused expression betrays he has no idea what I'm talking about. Anyway, I'm sorry about the slip-up. Hiya. Forget about it. He waves his paw at me. With everything happening, I don't think they even care. They have lots of more important things to deal with. Summoning a howl isn't something we do lightly. He says in a serious tone. In fact, the last one took place when I was just a young pup. I bet they're making sure they have all their bases covered. Is it true what your father said at the feast, that if the elders removed him, Vither would take his place? I guess. The wolf shrugs in equal doubt. I was surprised for them to speak of it so openly. Before, it was simply an unspoken assumption. There really is no one else as popular or prominent as Vither. If the Howl had to choose a replacement, it would most likely be him. Which would mean you'd not be the heir anymore. I say that in a rather concerned tone, but he seems almost to lighten up at the prospect. Perhaps. Not gonna lie, that would be nice. But Dreher is no leader, and even if Vither would appoint him as his successor, Hal would never consent to it. Especially not with the current situation. A chief must have a clear successor, and both should be figures others look up to. So, who would become chief after Vither? Rannoch falls silent, and he might as well have given me an answer. Oh, you're kinda trapped, aren't you? I muttered gently, but he only sighs. We are all born with a single destiny and purpose in life, both written in the stars long before we were even conceived. No schemes or plots could undo that. I was born to rule, and even if my father would be disgraced and Vither would take over, eventually my destiny would find a way to correct the course. It's good to hear you're at peace with that. I even admire it. I nod approvingly. You do seem to be born to lead. You command respect, loyalty, and devotion of those around you. Vol, Farissa, even Regara will follow you to the end. I saw the way she looked at you at the feast. I'd rather not relive that if that's okay with you. He says completely deflated, almost tucking his tail in. The whole thing Regara admires me for are not the things that I'm proud of. Which is another reason why you'll make a great chief. You won't be ruthless or cruel. I try to encourage him, but he doesn't seem convinced. I'm glad you say that, but life is never as easy as that. And you were right yesterday. If there's something I learned this week, is that I will do anything to protect those around me. That includes being ruthless and cruel if needs be. The wolf says in a rather cold tone, something I've never experienced from him thus far. He's serious and it's clear he has thought it through. The idea of having to become what he must become to defend his loved ones weighs heavily on him, and I just placed my hand on his shoulder. But can we not dwell on this? He asks with a quivering voice, and I nod. We have a long road ahead of us, and I'd rather we focused on the scenery. It's your opportunity to see Turnen in all its glory. Oh, I don't think anything could top what I saw yesterday. That to me was Turnen in all of its glory. I say in a surprisingly confident and seductive tone, which even takes me aback. What? The wolf just stops and stands there, gawking at me in embarrassment, and I decide to continue on as if nothing happened. I'm swinging my hips side to side as if I were on a catwalk, mustering all the provocativeness in my gait I can pull off without being comical. Eventually, I hear him clear his throat and rush after me. I allow a stride to bring him back to my side, and he clears his throat once again, trying to play it cool. I'm glad you enjoyed the views. Damn. Wish I dropped a coin. It's a sight I definitely want to revisit. His stunned and flustered expression finally makes me snort ungracefully, and I begin to chuckle. If you'd only seen your face. Is this it? No, that's not. Here we go. If you'd only seen your face. Hey. He mumbles uncomfortably. Don't make fun of me like that. Who said I'm making fun? Oh no. I lean onto his arm, wrapping my hands around it. Although the timing might have been off, I want you to know I very much enjoyed anything that did or didn't happen. I find myself saying gently with a heartfelt honesty, and he smiles. So did I. He muses through a toothy grin. You're surprisingly attractive, considering the lack of fur. My eyes open wide at this offhand compliment. One would expect a furless creature to look like a sick pup. Yeah, I get it. I cut him off rather harshly and pull away. Damn, your game really flew out of the window there. For a minute, I really feel offended, but it takes just a second for my humor to return, and I laugh out loud. Didn't know you're into sick pups. Now you make it sound creepy. He takes his turn being offended, and I continue to laugh. Not my fault you need to work on your comparison game. So what would humans say for how smooth you are? We say one's skin is as soft as baby's. I almost choke at a realization. You know what? Never mind. Fuck poetic license. Most of it ends up being creepy in retrospect. And with that, he laughs away as we continue through the next few 100 meters, just smiling and enjoying the morning stroll. The fresh air and the dewy scent of the woods really lightens up my mood. And I need to keep it up, as it doesn't take long for my body to start straining under the weight of all the baggage I'm carrying on my back. But I won't complain. After all, Rannoch is carrying God knows how much gold in that trunk. Still, the presence of such treasure fills me with slight unease. Do you think it's wise that we're traveling with all that wealth alone? What do you mean? The wolf asks, raising his brow. Don't you fear we could be ambushed, or... by whom? He cuts me off and his voice takes on a more mocking tone. The immediate area is patrolled by our packs, currently Vol's and Varys's wolves. Further beyond, the outer alphas maintain order. You're safe here. He tries to sound reassuring, but I keep looking at him with a rather unconvinced expression. Even if we were to be attacked, do you think some downtrodden unfortunate could beat me in combat? No. I swear to God, I just heard a vibration. I can see through his sigh and snort at the fact that I almost sound disappointed. We're safe within Turnen. You have my word for it. What about beyond? The road to Strandbart is desolate and speckled with impoverished farmsteads. If you're a highwayman and you're operating there, you really don't understand the meaning of highway behind your profession's name. He states snarkily, and I can't help but laugh at his observation. True. So how much exactly is 3 talents? I ask idly, toying with the very idea of my own price tag. Way too much. The wolf huffs, and I give him a worried look he clearly misreads, judging by his panicked reaction. Not that you aren't worth every penny, but... He sighs, rubbing his neck awkwardly. That amount is something that'll take a ward 3 years to repay. Trist's own debt is set at 7 talents, and he incurred it on behalf of his entire borough. Oh. I mumble awkwardly, looking to the ground while the wolf continues in a defeated tone. Paying that will set me back quite a bit. I meant to use my money to pay off Trist, but now that seems quite unlikely. Well, you don't have to pay it though, right? I ask, a bit confused by his sudden sad expression. I don't intend to run off while we're there. Oh, yeah, of course. He quickly straightens up and shakes his head dismissively. I wasn't suggesting that at all, but we'll have to settle that debt eventually. I narrow my brows. Something feels off about his erratic behavior, but I decide to let it be for now. Anyway, enough of that. The wolf waves his paws at me and comes to a stop. What's the matter? I wanted to show you something before we depart. That actually does sound very sus, so... Sorry, I ain't risking it. Cilio has taught me to censor everything. He nods off trail and leads me towards the greenery. We wade through quite a thicket, and I try my best to brush off all the stray leaves and branches. The heavy load I carry does not make the task any easier, but at least the improvised shoes come in handy, and I sally forth without a whimper, seeing Rannoch brave through with his own payload. It takes quite some time to push where he wants us to go, but eventually he stops me with a gentle pat on my shoulder. We're here, he says in a hushed voice, and he brushes aside the last bushes with his paw. I stop dead in my tracks with jaw dropping to my chest as I look upon his very own name tree. Oh my, is that... I ask out of courtesy than anything else, as the chiseled name in the trunk leaves no doubt what I'm actually looking at. The wolf nods, watching happily as I drop my backpack and take shaky, humble steps towards the tree. I don't know why, but I'm suddenly overtaken by a powerful emotion, almost as if I could sense the spiritual link between the tree and my wolf. It fills me with the same feeling of calm as he does, almost as if Rannoch's presence emanated from within. I dare not to touch it, stopping mere inches from the bark and lowering my gaze in reverence. That's when I notice the ground beneath it, with roots burrowing through the earth on each side. Is this where... Yes. He precedes my question with an answer, walking up beside me. You light at this very spot. In all fairness, seeing you standing here now feels almost surreal. Seems like a dream. I can relate to that. I smile weakly, looking at his loveful muzzle. Although I don't remember any of this, somehow I feel like I've been here before. I feel safe here and at peace. I'm glad to hear it. I feel the same, and that is why I always come here to meditate. I look back to the grass beneath my feet and crouch, reaching to the blades with my hands. For some reason, I thought there'd still be blood here. I mutter, noticing nothing of the sort. It's been 2 weeks since, and it rained, remember? He snorts, approaching me with amusement. What wasn't washed out, the animals took care of. It's so strange standing here after all that happened. It is beautiful, though, growing tall and strong, just as its namesake. I look up to the towering crown above us, and we both smile at the gentle rustle of leaves. This place even smells like him. Would you mind if... I ask, gesturing towards the tree with my hand, and he shakes his head. Not at all. At first I'm reluctant to touch it, almost like a pilgrim reluctant to touch a holy relic, but eventually my venturation turns into a desperate need for affirmation. But when my hand connects with the hard bark, I feel as if I was thrown down the well. I almost hear the thunderous sound of my plunge into that murky grave. Disturbed by my fall, the water grows dark and thick. All of a sudden, I'm back in the nothingness. A chill runs down my body as I were laid down on ice. Breathing comes hard, and then it comes to a stop. Everything's gone, and I want to scream, but I no longer have control of my body. Not again. Then my eyes open, but not really. Those are not my eyes. I watch like a person in a drive-in theater watches a movie. The eyes open and they see the tree, but only for a moment. Darkness claims everything once more, and it takes a while until they open again. I'm almost out of breath, submerged in this void. Suddenly, my lungs expand as if allowed to take one desperate gust of air, and I hear choking as the eyes blink in the light. I see the wolf. My wolf standing above me. He's startled, panicked even, blood covering his paws. By the moon, you are alive! Rannoch. I hear a voice utter his name. It's my voice. What? Who are you? What happened? The memory of our first encounter returns to me. He was telling the truth, not that I ever doubted him. I looked at him and uttered his name, and that's when the darkness returns one last time. I'm reliving that moment almost as if the tree showed it to me, and I'm immediately reminded of the deer druid. Finally, the spell is lifted, and I can hear the forest and birds once again. I open my eyes, my own eyes this time. I can see his name carved into the bark. It's the first time I see it. I know I've never seen it before. I witnessed my glimpses of awareness before I woke up in the cabin. Laying there, in the grass, I couldn't have seen it. It's fate. Whatever brought me here placed me in his care, and I knew it from the very first day. That's why I felt so oddly at peace with him. That's why we formed such a strong connection. Your name is really pretty. It rolls off my tongue as if I knew it forever. I state, trying to contain an emotional torrent erupting deep inside of me. I can almost imagine you carving the name here. Let me get rid of the, I'm done real quick. I mutter, tracing the etching with my fingers. How did you end up with it, if you don't mind me asking? Was it your choice? Yes, it was. The wolf nods. What does it mean? A wolf should never reveal his pup name, nor reason for his choice of an adult name. Seriously? I gasp in amazement at the secrecy of it all, but at the same time, carrying a few secrets of my own, I can definitely understand this. But there is a reason, right? There is. An embarrassing one, but there is. He mumbles awkwardly, shuffling the grass beneath his paws and looking away. And you're not going to tell me? Maybe one day, but not today. I finish for him with a gentle smile. I won't be the one to pry. Fine. I sigh, closing my eyes and taking a deep breath while stretching my arms out. As Versa once told me, all good things come in time. I'm glad you brought me here. His muzzle lights up and his tail wags at that comment, while I continue exploring the area. What's this? I ask as I stumble across a small stone structure. It almost looks like some sort of a garden lantern. It's a fae shrine, he says in a slightly weary tone. My mother was a bit superstitious. She had it commissioned upon my birth. Superstitious? I ask, not sure what that really means for a magical wary, otherworldly wolven society. She followed the old ways. I'm told she used to light a light here every day, asking the forest spirits to look over me. That's really sweet. I smile, clasping my hands together and looking at this token of her devotion. Do you continue doing that? And what? Leave an unattended fire next to my name tree? The wolf snorts dismissively. I doubt a small candle would burn down the forest. You'd be surprised. Either way, your mom seems quite a character. I'd love to learn more about her. I say absentmindedly, only to notice Rannoch's entire posture to deflate. Fuck. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. No, it's fine. The wolf sighs, lowering his head in defeat. I don't have much to share, I'm afraid. Father doesn't talk about Mom, but what I gathered from the others, he did one thing a wolf is never meant to do during his, first time. Which is, he fell madly in love. They both did. He scoffs in amusement and I smile. To many it almost seemed obscene, but they didn't care. All they wanted is to be together. That's why she stayed so long after your birth, isn't it? I made an educated guess. Do you know what happened to her? That question seems to have really set him up into high alert and the wolf perks up. I really don't want to talk about that. Sorry. No, it's me who's sorry. I should have guessed it's too personal for you to talk. It's not that. Rannoch cuts me off, placing his heavy upon my shoulder and lifting my chin with the other. There's a lot of things I'd want to talk about, but we only have so little time. I don't want to waste it lingering in the past when I can enjoy the present with you. Same, to be fair. I say, stepping closer to him and snuggling into his muscular arm. Thank you again for bringing me here. I wanted to see this place for quite a while now. The tree is really beautiful, although a bit bigger than I expected. Oh? He looks to me with confusion, then darts his gaze towards the tree. An involuntary smile appears on my face as he tilts his head in that typical canine fashion while scrutinizing it. I mean, it is around 22 years old. Then again, the named trees aren't really regular trees. Apparently there's some sylvan magic involved, some remnant of the old ways. He looks to me with a troubled gaze at his muddled expression. I guessed as much. I nod in agreement. I wouldn't mind learning more about that, to be fair. What, the old ways? That's something you'd have to investigate without me. Why? Is it another of the you'll be killed if you... No, no! My tease is cut off by his frantically shaking paws. I simply haven't got a clue about all that. My father decriminalized Sylvan practices. To the horror of the elders, I jest, but he sighs heavily. Not exactly a laughing matter. He was nearly killed for it. What? I gasp in shock and he looks back towards the tree. It was a very unpopular move. I think he did it because Mom was a believer. One of the alphas challenged him to a duel and lost. My father showed mercy, but the male was a bitter loser. During the following feast, he tried to assassinate him with a javelin. Father got pinned to his own chair. He nearly lost his life then. The scar on his chest, I conclude, grasping at my lips. It's pretty much the same shape and size of what a javelin would look like. That's when Vither rushed in and ripped the honorless traitor's throat wide open with his own fangs. After that, there was a massive purge. He and Dad banished all the malcontents to the outer packs, allowing only trusted wolves to remain within the village. Is that the dirt the elders have on him? Dirt? The wolf blinks at me in confusion, and I sigh internally. I guess I won't let him relax on this trip. I decide to share with him what I've overheard at the villa, the threats and the shouting sprees, but to my surprise, Rannoch takes it all awfully well. It's been like that ever since I can remember. Father's transition to power wasn't exactly peaceful. The assassination attempt was the last tremor of a far worse time, but I can see him divert his gaze and nudging me into a slow gait. I really don't want to talk about politics, my past, or anything other that could drag our mood down. Here. He stops for a moment to look back at the tree one last time, and I join his locked gaze with mine. Here's where my future unfolded, and I finally have it made, flesh standing beside me. What I want now is to simply look forward and enjoy the time we're given. Amen. I nod happily, almost tearing up at a sweet testimonial. I'm sorry for being such a killjoy. It's fine. I've grown accustomed to your empty mind wandering off. You have lots of questions and simply want answers. There is a time and place for everything. My place right now is at your side, and the time for us is to simply relax and take in our cross-country trip. I pick up our luggage and again wrap myself around his arm as we proceed to leave the place with subtle smiles. That was very sweet. The road winds lazily through many overgrown knolls and mounds, the trees flanking the path looking older and wilder, eager to reclaim the strip of land cutting their realm in half. Now and then my feet stumble, drawing weary gazes from the wolf, but I muster all my strengths not to falter. Hours go by and my resolve dwindles, stifled by the feeling of utter helplessness as the scenery seems to not change much at all. It seems as if we are barely moving, but Rannoch spurs me on, giving encouragements every time I'm about to surrender. The backpack weighs heavily on my shoulders. The merry clanging of the pan and pot now seems more like mockery. Why do we take all of this stuff? But each time I feel a complaint dangling at the edge of my tongue, my eyes dart to the wolf. Heavy armored and with his massive longsword, he still carries the unimaginable load of gold on his side in silence. I will not insult him by whining, so I resign myself to silently endure. I have little strength to talk, but that gives me plenty of time to think. My mind almost strays to the uncanny room I escaped tonight. The world I left behind now feels like a dream or a childish flight of fancy. But it is real, as real as the world I'm walking in right now. At least, I like to think that. The sun twinkles between the leaves of the woodland canopy, and I wish we were more out in the open. In summer, this shade would provide a much-needed respite from the heat, but now, in the last cups of winter, the harsh cold breeze serves only as a reminder of how little I'm wearing. I pull the cloak tighter around me and continue following the sun with my eyes. Shortly past noon, we stop at the side of the road, and I drop the backpack to the ground with a loud gasp of relief. The wolf looks at me with an empathetic smile and hands me the water skin. I uncork it and take several deep gulps, not minding the fact that some of the cool liquid trickles down my chin. God, I needed that. I exhale, drawing a subtle chuckle from him. Well, we've covered 8 miles. Is that bad or good? Neither this nor that. He shrugs, taking his turn with a drink. But we've been walking for just 4 hours, so... It felt like forever! I groan, slumping down onto the ground and just looking at the dirt between my splayed feet. How far is Strandbard anyway? At least 80 more miles.
Nope, have fun without me. I'm going home. AJDFHGSHJDBVHSDBHJVDN.
Rannoch snorts, looking between the food parcels we've gotten early this morning. He passes me one of the quiches and I bite into it despondently. This means we have another 40 hours of continuous march. If you can keep up the pace. He emphasizes teasingly, taking a seat beside me, but I don't find it funny. Seeing my mood remaining firmly on the downside, he bumps into my shoulder. Don't worry, it'll get easier with time. We still have at least 8 hours of road to cover today. 8 hours? I exclaim in horror, looking at my ragged shoes with worry. No words can describe how glad I am I've insisted on the improvised footwear. I cannot feel my legs. Cheer up. He pets my cheek with one finger. For now, just try to eat and rest. You'll see. Before you know it, we'll be setting camp. I lock my defeated gaze with the quiche and take a deep breath. He's right. I take a bite and enjoy the treat Cora has prepared. It's a crumbly crust with eggy, cheesy goodness speckled with smoked ham and chives. In all fairness, even this exhausting trip beats the nightmare I escaped a scant few hours ago. At least I have my wolf beside me. I lean onto his shoulder and we eat the food in silence, exchanging the water skin every few bites. I'm too tired to talk and no words are needed. It's just him and me. Us. And we're both simply enjoying each other's company. True to his word, the evening comes sooner than I expected. We stopped only one more time, another 4 hours into our journey, dividing it into 3 neat segments. On the third leg of our trek, the sky grew darker and darker with each passing step. The dim light of the day began to wane fast, and we decided to stop for the night. This spot should do nicely. The wolf nods in satisfaction at a little clearing just a few paces off the trail. I look around and agree without conviction. I'm not a camper, so I don't know whether this place is good or not. All I really care about is that we're finally done walking. I throw our luggage onto the ground and plop myself lazily in the grass, while he removes his gear. I watch as the wolf scurries about between different bushes. He's collecting various thin and long sticks, piling them up in front of me. Those are for the tent. He explains, pulling out his side sword and cutting off a dry branch off a nearby tree. Once he has all he needs, he nods towards me, asking for help. Reluctantly, I get up against the wishes of every aching muscle of my body. He uses his blade to dig a shallow hole and place one end of the stick against it. Hold it like this. He requests in a nod while he gets another pole and mirrors it with the other one I'm supporting. When their top ends meet, the wolf secures them with rope, effectively creating one side of the triangular frame. Within a few minutes, the supporting structure is ready to receive the cover, and I watch with satisfaction as the wolf fastens the cloth to the ground with metal pins. With the tent set up, Rannoch clears a small spot, digging a shallow pit to which he deposits firewood he happened upon. Once the fire is dancing merrily, our camp is set, not thanks to me in any part. But it seems the wolf gives me leeway on account of how exhausted I am. I scooch closer to the flames, drawing as much warmth from them as I can. After such an intense workout, a sudden lack of movement makes one incredibly sensitive to the slightest of breezes. Rannoch takes his time to scan the surrounding area, clearly looking for something. Once he finds his quarry, his muzzle lightens up, and I watch as he measures quite a long branch in his paws, trying to snap it in two. Confident that it's sturdy enough, he pulls it over to the fire, and my curiosity intensifies when he then rolls over a massive trunk. What's he up to? I watch Rannoch wedge the far end of the branch into the fallen tree and use the rolled trunk to prop it up, creating an arm from which he can suspend the iron pot. The ingenuity of this guy continues to amaze me. When he's satisfied with this contraption, he dusts his paws and looks at me with a smile. So, want some stew? Would I ever? I muse, very much enticed by the prospect of a hot meal. He fills the pot with the remaining water from the skin bag and sets it to boil. I'm still very much bushed, so I lean back and breathe the fresh evening air while the wolf rustles through our backpack. How are we going to make a stew when we didn't bring any ingredients with us? Oh, there's an old scouting trick to get your belly full. Rannoch mutters in amusement. Cora has made us some pork and leek pies. He presents me with 2 round pastries and I look at him in confusion. How is that going to make a stew? Simple. You just dunk them in and let them dissolve. He shrugs, doing exactly as he just explained. I watch him stir the pot with a wooden spoon, breaking the pies apart while his tail swishes in content. The pastry will give it body, while the gravy and stuffing flavor. The wolf takes a quick sip, nodding in approval. It's not the best thing in the world, but much better than going a night without a warm belly. I'll take your word for it. I smile, pulling in closer and leaning into his furry body. The stew takes a few minutes to come around, and once it's boiling and ready, the wolf nudges me gently before I doze off. Mind fetching the bowls? He asks politely, and I nod. With the steaming food served, we sit opposite each other and dig in with wide grins on our faces. The stew smells pretty much like the meat pies it was made of, and the flavor, although a bit bland, is such a welcome sensation. In fact, I enjoy its warmth and thickness the most, and it fills the belly nicely. As I spoon the last portion of the stew, my eyes venture to the speckled sky above. It feels so vast and endless, but above all, alien. I can't fend off this feeling of being stranded somewhere completely foreign. Not a single feature in the sky is familiar. Even the moon seems different now that I look at her closely. The vision I had the other night feels doubly cruel. Everything I knew, everything I had, is gone. Most likely forever. What's the matter? The wolf nudges my shoulder, clearly noticing the shift in my mood. It's nothing, really. I just suddenly felt incredibly alone. Alone? He raises one brow challengingly, and I shake my head. Sorry, it must sound silly and a bit ungrateful. I cherish your company more than anything in this world. But he aptly guesses there's an asterisk, and I sigh heavily. I don't want you to think I'm crazy. Never. He protests, and the reassurance in his voice gives me the courage to say what I meant to say for quite a while now. I don't think I'm from here. Well, of course you aren't. There are no humans in Turnin. I shake my head again, this time in a mixture of amusement and frustration at him missing my point. I don't mean the forest or the whole continent for that matter. You think you're from across the sea? No, I don't think I'm from this world altogether. My eyes meet a surprised gaze with determination, and at first, the wolf is taken aback. I allow my words to hang for a moment, and eventually he sets his bowl aside. What makes you say that? The sky, among many other things you wouldn't understand. I flash my brow, looking away in embarrassment. In truth, I'm not really sure how to even go about this verbal madness I'm about to unpack on this poor, unsuspecting wolf. Try me. He flashes his brows right back at me in a taunting manner. I know you see us, for the most part, as backward savages, but astrology is something we're intimately familiar with. It dictates our calendars and helps us navigate. Astronomy. Wait, what did he say? But astrology is what he said. I correct him teasingly, causing the gray male to blink. What? Astrology is more like fortune-telling and stuff. I know what astrology is, and it still deals with the knowledge of stars. You do realize it's pretty much most of Versa's job, right? He teases right back and forces me to chuckle. There you go. That's better. Turn that frown upside down. My smile widens as the wolf rubs my cheek with its furry paw, banishing the frown that adorned my face just a moment ago. So, what about the sky upsets you so? I don't recognize any of it. I shrug in defeat, looking up towards a sparkling firmament. Firmament. You say it's early spring. If I were truly home world-wise, not just the place I was born in, Orion would have been clearly visible in the sky, no matter my location. Orion? It's the name of a constellation, a group of stars that... I know what a constellation is. He growls playfully, rolling his eyes and returning to his meal. Sorry. The most recognizable part of Orion is his belt, 3 bright stars in a line, which is with the last one slightly off axis. It's not there. In fact, I can't even see the dippers. I assume those are most familiar stars to you? The wolf mumbles between each remaining spoonful. I was never any good with stars, but most kids were taught how to recognize the dippers. Mainly because at the end of the little one, you have the northern star. The northern star? It's right there. He points vaguely into a spot high above us, finally cleaning his bowl with long laps of his tongue. I allow him to finish, as he seems to be quite hungry, and it was a long day of exhausting trek after all. But once he's done, I look to him expectantly as he takes a thirsty gulp from the wineskin. That's not the northern star, at least not the one I know. Of course it is. What else would it be? It's one of the brightest stars, and the entire celestial sphere revolves around it. That's why it's so invaluable for finding your way. Yeah, I get that. That's how it works for my northern star as well, but those two are not the same. Well, maybe the constellations are different because you're on the other side of the globe. This catches me by surprise, and I look at him wide-eyed. Wait, you know that the world is round? Okay, now you're actively trying to be insulting. He scoffs teasingly, taking another long swig of drink to wash down his finished meal, and I shake my hands in protest. No, no, sorry if that's how it came across. I'm just surprised. I know, a knowledgeable savage. The wolf sneers again, and I hang my head in resignation. Anyway, if you're suggesting I'm from the south, you're mistaken. How do you know? 1. I vividly remember being from the northern hemisphere. Your memory is a jumbled mess. I wouldn't trust it that much if I were you. He interrupts, and although he's doing it more in a form of another jab, I can't help but concede some merit to his way of thinking. Okay then, 2. My complexion is way off for the southern part of your world. What do you mean by that? I kind of skimmed your books, but I understood that most of the lands down south are scorching hot deserts and rocky wastelands, savannas and jungles. Fair-skinned humans don't fare well in those areas. I state plainly. Sure, perhaps in my modern globalized world that's not exactly the case, but I doubt mass migration occurs here in their long, long, far-away times. People of my skin tone tend to stick to colder climates, temperate at most. Anything warmer than that and the skin becomes tanned. His puzzled expression makes it clear he doesn't understand what I'm saying. Hiya! But at the same time, I doubt he knows much about skin tones anyway. They're covered with fur head to toe. They are shielded from the sun. We, on the other hand, only have melanin. I'm definitely from the north, and this is definitely not my sky. I conclude, throwing my hands upwards in resignation. It's not just constellations, though. Some of the stuff up there's completely mental. I mean, I've never seen a red star in my life. For an unknown reason, the wolf visibly shudders at the mention of this oddity. His ears fall flat, and he diverts his gaze away from where I was pointing. That's the ruby eye, and it's better not to pay it much attention. Why? I scoff in amusement at his deflated posture. It's an eye that never blinks, and according to legends, it belongs to the Lord of Nightmares. If you gaze at it for too long, you give him a chance to peer into your soul and find your darkest fears. That's an odd woven legend. It isn't woven. He shakes his head, looking at me with a rather serious expression. Every creature in Avalon knows to avoid that star. If it's the first thing you see at night, it's a really bad omen. Well then, good thing it wasn't the first thing I saw. From now on, let us pretend it doesn't exist. I smiled gently, patting his paw in agreement. I'm not about to mock his beliefs and customs again. That's pretty much what everyone does. Rannoch nearly empties the wineskin, leaving perhaps a small gulp at the bottom of it. He passes it to me as he rubs his muzzle clean, and I decide to humor him. I chug the remaining contents, and once I'm done, I unseal my lips from the back with a satisfied gasp. I know it sounds weird, but you talking about the stars kind of soothes my nerves. I wouldn't mind if you gave me a crash course. A what now? Another of my word choices catches him off guard, and I chuckle. A rundown, a lesson of sorts. Of course, I'd love to. His attitude quickly changes from surprise to that of excitement. The sound of his tail taps brings a smile to my face, and I look as the wolf arches backwards to look towards the sky. Stargazing is one of my favorite pastimes. He croons, lowering himself down onto the ground and patting the spot beside him. Come, lay down next to me. Doesn't take long for me to accept the invitation, and I crawl there, gently scooching myself into his torso. Comfortable? The wolf asks as I rest my head against his biceps and nod. Very well then, as I said, that's the northern star. He points again, but this time I pay careful attention without questioning any of this. It's actually the beginning of the northern fork. It goes down here and splits into two. Okay, you said astrology with the Rannoch. First thing that came to mind was Bill Nye the Science Guy. Bill Nye the Science Guy. I'm sure there's some legend attached to it, but I never paid much attention when the old shaman was teaching us this stuff. I snuggle into his muscle, and he laughs awkwardly, keeping an eye on his clawed finger still tracing the skies above. On the right side, you have the northern crown. This one I know a little better. It is said it was once a real crown made of silver leaves and diamonds, created by a powerful god as a gift to a beautiful mortal. He hoped to seduce her, but she refused his advances. She chose her own kind, and in effect death, over deity and immortality. Insulted, the god broke the crown apart and in a fit of rage scattered it over the sky, so that she and her descendants forever would know what they spurned. Huh, I like that. It's poetic and dramatic. I mutter in amusement, drawing his momentary attention. Human myths are also like that. I'm not sure if this one's a woven myth, but it's something we tell the pups. Why? Aren't woven myths this melodramatic? Rannoch chuckles a little at my tease and flexes his muscles tightly. Are you kidding? You should see a woven courtship. Sparks never fail to fly. That I can believe. I let out a subtle laugh and he smiles back at me. There is undeniable sexual tension in this small exchange, and we both get slightly flushed. So we turn our gazes back to the sky. Here on the left, you have the archer. He was set there to protect the crown so that no mortal could ever claim it. See? His bow is even drawn. Huh. He trails his finger to the opposite side of the sparkling dome. That clump of stars over there is called the spider web. I'm not really aware of any myth relating to it, but I'm sure there are a few. What about this one over there? I point to a glimmering collection of stars that seem to almost tease me with their beauty. Ha! What? I ask, confused by a sudden laugh and now quite a telling smirk. That's the great wolf. Get out. No, really. Curious he drew your attention. His continuous smirk intensifies and I blush slightly. Oh no, two of us can play at this game. I lean in closer, pressing my body slightly harder against his form and muster the most seductive whisper I possibly can. Seems I have an affinity for great wolves. I could swear I felt a shudder shoot through his body, and at the corner of his eye, I can see his bulge push against the stitching of his pants. Oh god. Oh god. Damn, he's cute when he's flustered, but I decide not to push it. Instead, I return to my neutral position, looking up into the blue expanse as the wolf clears his throat. Anyway, it's a celestial form of the Great Spirit. Whenever he's not roaming the world, he looks upon it from up there and guards the heavens. And what about that bright smudge traversing the sky? I asked regarding what I assume to be their galaxy. It looks so much like the Milky Way. Almost makes me believe this might be home after all. We call it the White River, and there at its center is the House of Dawn. He points to a radiant collection of stars. It's supposed to be a celestial court made of light where some believe the deserving dead go. Some, but not wolves, right? No, we firmly believe in the final darkness. But I understand why some can follow the faith of the light, believing that some part of them returns to the House of Dawn. It must be comforting. It sure is. I mutter, not really certain where I stand on religion right now. And again, everything does point for me to be somehow reincarnated. Sometimes I even doubt my own conviction, especially when seeing the even star or morning star beginning their journeys from there. Even star? There are two stars, brighter than any other stars appearing in the galaxy. Appearing in the sky. They seem to venture to and fro the House of Dawn. I'm not sure if it's the same star really, just showing at a different time. But it is there. Is it out tonight? I look around trying to find it, but come up empty-handed. No, it doesn't always appear. The Evan stars show up in the evening, and the morning stars at dawn. They also don't move like the rest. Instead of slowly rotating on the sky, they seem to be passing by. Might be a planet then. A what now? His confusion is so sudden and so surprising that I choke on a chuckle. You know, a planet like this one. What do you mean? What's a planet? You said you were good at astrology or astronomy or whatever. You said you were good at it. You know that the world is round, but you don't have a concept of a planet. My voice might be more taunting than I intend, but I'm still completely thrown off by his remark. Thankfully, the wolf doesn't take it too seriously and dons an equally mocking tone. I'm sorry, my lord, that I wasn't educated at the Tigery Academy. I only learned what's useful for my backward savage survival. Okay, knock it off. I elbow him slightly and proceed to answer his question more thoughtfully. A planet is a world, just like this one. Well, maybe not like this one exactly. Most of them are barren and devoid of life. Empty worlds floating in space. He sounds unconvinced, looking up in silence until his curiosity gets the better of him. But why would it glow? It reflects the light of the sun, just like the moon does. If you look at this world from out there, it would also shine, but instead of white, it would look like a blue marble. I can almost picture him following this up with, "How do you know?" But instead the wolf falls silent and we both gaze at the emptiness above us for a while. I think that he is looking at the night sky with a different perspective now, and soon my suspicion is confirmed. So you say there are other worlds out there? Yep, thousands of them within the visible sky, and millions further beyond. That's some insane stuff. His voice is filled with awe, while his gaze doesn't break from the glittering stars above. He doesn't seem to be questioning anything I tell him. It feels good to be trusted like this. Yeah. I muse through a smile and snuggle deeper into his muscle, only to hear him snort. Not as insane as you claiming to be from out there. You'd be surprised at the level of insane I'm willing to entertain here. My chuckle joins his merriment and he murmurs at me teasingly. Okay, surprise me. At first I'm not sure how I'd even start to explain my predicament, but I quickly realized that his affinity for astronomy might be the best gateway for us to reaching an understanding. The world I come from is a part of a set. He croons seductively, but I simply continue. 9 planets, in fact, or 8, and a planetoid if you're from one of those annoying know-it-alls. The wolf raises his brow higher and higher with each passing word, and eventually it leaves no doubt he's struggling to keep a straight muzzle. Okay, I can see your expression, and I really need you to know that I'm not making this up. There are 9 planets in the solar system: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. To my own surprise, naming them fills me with sudden joy and hope, almost as if saying that aloud reaffirmed my belief in what's real. I'm not insane, I remember this. Apart from Earth, none of those planets can sustain life. The closest planetary system to the solar one is Alpha Centauri, and as far as we know, there are no life-sustaining planets there either. And this is where my mood plummets to the dreadful realization. This means that wherever we are, it's far beyond the world I know. It's the name. It's the name of the game. At first, we stay silent, both gazing at the endless possibilities of different worlds suspended in the sea above in the sea of darkness. But the longer the silence lasts, the more unsettled I become. I look to the wolf, who doesn't break his sight from the stars, and eventually I rub his chest fluff to solicit a reaction. Rannoch, you're saying what exactly? That you're from beyond the stars? It's clear he is unable to comprehend this. And now that he vocalizes his confusion, I feel even more lost at what I'm trying to communicate here. It all sounds bloody mad. That's why I struggle to talk to you about this. I don't know what I'm saying. Our joint awkwardness lingers, but only for a short while. It's about to freak the fuck out. The wolf finally adjusts his position so that his torso is more leaned towards me so that he can embrace me gently. I'm not saying I don't believe you, although I have to suspend my disbelief quite a lot here. He mutters uneasily. There are humans on Avalon, you know that, right? You might just be confused. Maybe you studied myths and legends, and after what happened to you, they got jumbled up with your memories. It's clear he's weighing his words carefully as not to offend me, and I feel bad for putting him in such an awkward situation. If I were in his shoes, I'd feel exactly the same. Wouldn't that make more sense than you being from, what, out there? The thing is, I don't even know if it's out there. I shrug equally uncomfortably. A big-ass red star would have been a memorable part of my nightly stargazing sessions. The fact that there are humans here makes it even more confusing. I don't blame you for struggling to understand what I'm saying. Even I can't wrap my head around this. I can't begin to imagine your torment. He brushes my cheek with his paw in a comforting manner. It's been driving me insane those last few days. But I didn't know who to talk to without coming across as deranged. You're the only one I can trust. Thank you, and I'll try my best to prove worthy of it, but... He pauses, looking back towards the sky. I'm glad you didn't speak to anyone else about this. Well, I was considering talking to Verissa. Bioluna, I'm glad you didn't. Anyone but her. What? Why? She's a dear friend, but she's also a shaman. Rannoch states heavily. The tribe's safety will always take precedence. If you tell her any of this, she would have gotten spooked and dug up some obscure scrolls or an absurd legend that would paint you as something bad or foreboding. I'd rather have her stay focused on the task of protecting you, without dividing her loyalties. Seems a little bit underhanded. I don't conceal how uncomfortable it makes me to hide stuff like this from her. It is, I won't lie about that, but she only protected your life so far because she believes you're innocent and helpless. What you told me not only sounds mad, but incredibly dangerous. How so? It's a level of arcane knowledge that approaches a magister level. Everyone is already quite convinced you're Tigeri noble. Thanks to you. I interrupt grumpily, but he ignores it. If they suspect you have anything to do with their Magus class, that you've studied the hidden arts, it would mean a death sentence for you. So far, I'm facing a death sentence for merely existing, so this isn't exactly news at this point. I'm being serious. Why? Were the other warnings just for laughs? I jest, but his stern look quickly drives my levity away, and I just shrug in defeat. I'm no mage. I don't have any magical powers. Not all mages wield raw magic. Many only possess ancient knowledge, but both are equally as dangerous. The wolf groans, closing his eyes. No mage can enter Turnen without a royal warrant or without clearly declaring himself as such. If you'd be accused of being one, it would mean espionage and potentially cause a major diplomatic scandal. Surely this could be easily verifiable. Just asking for my credentials would be enough. He gives me a rather condescending look and I raise my hands. What? You honestly can't be this naive. Tigron would deny you being a mage whether you were one or not. Who in their right mind would admit to a captured spy? Damn. He's right. World or ages apart, one thing never changes. States never admit to any wrongdoing. But with that, another thought enters my mind, one I was trying to suppress for quite a while now, but it was always there. I finally decide to voice it. Do you think I am one? What? He blurts out in panic. No, I didn't mean it like that. I know, but it made me wonder. Do you think I could be one? What are you saying? Finally, the wolf pulls away from me, slightly startled, and we both sit up, looking at each other intently. Can you just answer the question? I plead, and he finally concedes with a silent nod. No, I don't think you are. I think you're just really confused. Believe me, I have trouble understanding any of this myself. The beast folk, the wolven language part. I can't even wrap my head around magic being real, but I sigh heavily, fearful of what I'm about to suggest next. That being said, what if I was a spy, a tigery spy with his memory wiped clean? Perhaps through a spell of sorts? Why would you say that? He tilts his head in bewilderment, and I decide to continue this wave of honesty between us. No secrets. I cannot bear to hold them on my own any longer. Sometimes I hear voices. They don't make much sense. It's a jumbled mess most of the time, and it feels like someone's toying with me. I realize how this might come across, so I immediately add a correction. I don't lose control or anything, not motor skills, so it's not like something's taking over, not in a possession sense at least. Kalen's existence is just... RP headphone users. Kalen exists. Literally every single wolf in existence. That's it. That's literally it. Just like, literally every single wolf in existence is just by Kalen's existence. The deluge of words becomes more erratic as I continue, so I cut it off short with a very panicked look. For a moment, Rannoch looks at me with a troubled expression, but it becomes immediately apparent he's more worried about me than anything else. He takes hold of my hand and squeezes it firmly in a comforting manner. I probably shouldn't have said anything. I'm glad you did. If you need help, please let me know. Because if you don't tell me, I won't know how to help. Don't bottle things up, especially not things like this. I nod and sigh in slight relief. I'm glad to have him as a companion. He's really my anchor. All this talk of tigery and how my knowledge and such fits their way of life, I think it started to get to me. If they use magic and are as spy happy as you seem to believe, what if they wiped my memory and I'm just a walking dummy? I don't think that's likely. The wolf scoffs in an oddly confident way. How do you know? I probably shouldn't say this, but he scratches his neck fluff uncomfortably, pulling his muzzle down in the process. Oh, fuck. Okay, now you're making me nervous. I take hold of his paw, which is still comforting me, looking intently into his eyes, and finally causing the wolf to sigh. We did consider this already. In fact, it was our first instinct once I brought you home. What? The bandages that Verissa burned? Well, that's not the only thing she did with them. As a shaman, she's responsible for the physical and spiritual safety of our people. She has ways of detecting magic and enchantments. He mutters uncomfortably, and I start to realize where this is headed. She tested your blood, and there was not a shred of arcane in it. Any spell, especially as powerful as a mind-altering one, would leave a trace behind. Oh. Have a good one. Whatever happened to you was purely physical, and anything that's happening to you now is psychological. No magic involved. He smiles encouragingly, but I'm still not entirely convinced. You might have studied in Tigeron. In fact, of that I am absolutely sure. But you were not involved with any magic. That's how we got Vol to finally shut up. There was no blood ritual, just mauling that, and not left a single wound on your body. The wolf finishes his awkward explanation and looks back at the stars with a worried expression. I, on the other hand, try to process this whole mess and and I'm as stumped as I was before we even started this conversation. None of it makes any sense, and the more I'm trying to solve this mystery, the less I understand it. I know I cannot convince him that I am not from this world. In fact, before the encounter with the other mother, I was solely conceding it all to my imaginings. But I know it's all real. Both places exist, and somehow I managed to bridge the gap. Even if he says it was without magic, it had to happen somehow. Ugh. Eventually, I simply sigh and plop myself onto the ground, stretching my arms behind my head in the grass. Fucking weird. You're not being mad? About what? You being careful? I scoffed teasingly. If I had found a naked twink covered in blood on my doorstep, I'd ruin every fucking check possible. I'd run every fucking check possible before even considering bringing that shit inside. Kind of speaks volumes of me, now that I think about it. I'd let myself die at my own threshold. The wolf laughs and rests himself beside me, looking at me with his kind green eyes. You're not that bad. You seem keen to help others. What makes you say that? I saw it first paw with Anel, and you've also made two unlikely friends in a short span of time. Vol and Trist aren't very friendly. Whatever you did, it resonated with them. He pats his biceps, welcoming me to rest my head there again, an invitation I eagerly take. You're a good soul, Kaylin. I know stuff is getting messy, and it must be that much harder for you to deal with when your memory is the way it is, but all you need to remember is who you are. That's all that matters. The rest is garnish. Just follow the compass. The wolf pats my chest, and my heart dances to his tune. No matter how messed up the situation or how abstract is our conversation, you always manage to bring me down to a place of calm. I don't think I've ever known anyone like that. I'm glad to have a positive effect on your mental state. It's lovely to see him smile like this, and we spend the next few moments in silence just admiring the sky above. Eventually, I begin to feel the call of Nyx, and once I yawn softly, causing Rannoch to take a large, exaggerated one, I decide to ask a simple question. Would you mind if we slept right here? I know you went through all this trouble to set up camp, but the sky's so beautiful tonight. Of course not. You're reading my mind, Moondrop. He winks at me, pulling me into a tighter embrace. I'm not saying I'm going to sleep this very moment, but I'd like to just observe the stars for now. If I drift off, I hope you'll sleep well. I know I will. With you in my arms, always. He snickers, and we both remain silent, our eyes warily, sleepily wandering to the glimmering expanse. Somewhere out there is someone like me, slowly drifting off to sleep in an alien world in the arms of a lovable stranger. There has to be. Billions of stars with infinite possibilities. Maybe among them is my own sun. There's no way back. Perhaps, but if that's the case, I'm happy to be wherever I am. Just me and my wolf, with the endless sky as our nighttime canopy. We're gonna leave off here tonight. The second night there's a treat for you. I don't know whether to be scared or I don't know. I don't know how to feel right now. I think I'm scared. Oh God. Yeah, I'll take your word for it.
Mom, come pick me up. I'm scared.
Yeah, probably isn't all that bad. In reality, just a metric fuck ton of... But yeah. Okay. There's a fucking ant on the wall. So, stay safe, have a good night, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.